Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Cheryl Carr, your work doctor, and this is the Achieve with Dr. C broadcast. I am so happy to see all of you, anyone that is watching this rebroadcast, and those of you that tune in live. I just want to say good morning. Thank you for joining me and talking about this subject we're talking about for the month of July, which is the practice of silence. Now, look, if you watch the rebroadcast, you're not a follower, please follow me on Facebook. And also make sure you subscribe, click that little subscribe button on YouTube. That way you get notifications for when I'm on live. You also will get advanced knowledge of things that I'm doing. Got some exciting things coming for the remainder of this year. I would love to share them with you in advance so you get them before everybody else. So, thank you again for joining me. And you're going to start seeing some changes with my broadcast just simply because I get the majority of my viewers in the rebroadcast. And yet, and still, I think I do this show. I do my broadcast um, like it's alive. And I forget people watch shows like this or podcasts after the fact. So I want to start paying attention to that and making sure you guys know what to do, making sure you know where to go. I always leave live links to things for further self study and self coaching because although I'm not giving medical advice, I'm not giving you psychological advice or psychology advice, mental and health advice as a doctor. I'm giving you my opinion, but it's well researched opinion. Also, I want you to be able to self coach yourself. That is something I practice. I've been practicing for years, even though, yes, I believe you need to see a psychologist or a medical health professional or psychotherapist when you have that need. It is important for you to see someone. I'm your work doctor. When you have issues with work and behaviors at work, when you have issues with behavior, period, those are things I can help you with. I'll make sure I share my telehealth link in here where you can reach out to me. You can always talk to me. The first 30 minutes is free. From then, I can accommodate you with, because I'm not just insurance, I am self pay. I can accommodate you with sliding fees and things to help you. And the reason why I'm telling you all of this information is because the subject we'll be talking about today is something that I really believe needs to be addressed. Now, it fits into the topic for the month, which is the practice of silence. But the greater issue is how do you do it? I don't like giving people tips and well being information without giving them the practical steps to how to apply it. How do I practice silence? And with saying that, there are lots of things you cannot do until you get your whole ecosystem together. And by that, I mean your well being is all of you. It's your spirit, it's your physical, it's your environment, it's your relationships, it's your finances, it's your whole being, how you move in this world. You have to tap into all of that before you can get to a place of good quality, silent, and slow living. And that's why I want to talk to you today about an emotion that I believe we're suffering with. I think that's a good word. Even though it's perfectly fine to have this emotion, it's the way we're expressing it as a society and the way we're expressing it in our interpersonal relationships, and definitely how we're expressing it in the workplace. We are a very angry human race right now. I would say just in America and our society, but it's across the globe. I am in prayer for the people of Cuba right now. I visited Cuba a year and a half ago. I think it's been a year and a half ago, and got to spend time with the people They are fighters and they have lived under oppression for years, for decades. And it's time. And I'm so grateful that they're fighting for their freedom and they're protesting dictatorship and people that are not providing with the basics of human rights, which is, pursuit of happiness. And they don't have infrastructure. They don't have a lot of things. And so the people are fighting back, and we must pray for them and help in any way we can because that's their right. But that type of anger is an example of when anger finally boils over and it makes you behave or act. And those are the things that we have to have self control. So I want to give you a definition of anger just so that you know what's called a clinical definition of anger, or a definition so you can hang your hat on it and not just have your personal opinion about what anger is, because a lot of times we don't identify clearly and concisely what something is. We don't call a thing a thing. I think Alana Van Zant says that a lot, but we don't call a thing a thing very often. We call it everything but what it really is. So I love to give definitions so that you can hang your hat on it and have a clear understanding of what anger is. Anger is defined as a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. Anger is often referred to as a secondary emotion because the primary emotion is what makes you resort to the emotion of anger. It's a protective emotion. It's a cover up emotion of the primary emotion that you're feeling. A primary emotion is what is felt immediately before you become angry. And that can be hurt, betrayal, loss, death, grieving. All of those things can happen. Someone stealing from you, theft, can produce anger. Now, there's three types of anger. There's three definitions for anger. There's passive aggression, open aggression, and assertive anger. Now, assertive anger is that anger that makes you stand up, like what the people of Cuba are doing right now, like what people do when there's an outright wrong, mistreatment, or miscarry of justice. That's open or assertive anger. Open aggression can be that out of control. We call that the crimes of passion, when someone just, blows a gasket and all the repressed anger they've been feeling just boils over and they are unable to control themselves. And we call those fits of rage and blinding anger. And then we have passive aggressive anger, which we have seen a lot. It's called microaggression or passive aggressive. And that's when people throw rocks and hide their hands. Or, as my dad used to say, pick shade trees for you to sit under. It's that behavior that isn't in your face, it's an undercurrent, it's a behind the scenes, it's a backdoor type of behavior and an expression of anger. So, good morning. Good morning, Victoria. How are you? Welcome. Glad to have you here listening in. I'm talking about anger and silent practice this morning. So I hope you'll get something from it. All right. So while anger is completely normal, it's an instinctive emotion. Like I said earlier, it's a protective emotion. It's something that happens when a primary emotion is hit, like your sadness or justice or a feeling of passion, or when you've been hurt or you've had theft or loss. Anger can come up. And that's what anger is. And there's meaning behind anger. As humans, we are meaning making machines. It's just natural in our conscious and our subconscious. We always provide meaning for anything that happens to us, and then we respond accordingly. That's why I'm giving you a clinical definition of anger in hopes that it will help you spot that emotion for yourself or in those you love. Because a lot of times people are simmering angry or seething angry, and it's coming out in a lot of ways. And it's important to identify that undercurrent emotion, that protective emotion, and help people find healthy ways to express it. And we'll talk about that. So, the feeling of anger turns into behaviors, especially if it's kept undercurrent and it's very deep anger that you just piled anger on top of the anger. And a lot of women suffer from this. A lot of women are so passive aggressive and competitive because we're so angry inside. We've suffered injustice, we've been hurt, we've been betrayed. We have all of these primary emotions that we take our anger in response, an instinctive or intuitive response to being angry, and we push it down under a cloak of being nice. I love to tell people I am not nice anymore. Nice can be a fake act. I'm always kind because kindness is who you are. Nice is how you may behave. And a lot of times, nice is a cloak, it's a front. People aren't really kind under that nice act. Underneath that, they got daggers and they're repressing some passive aggressive anger. So I don't like when people are fake nice to me. I can smell it from a mile. And a lot of women live here. And that's why when someone pushes on that hurt or pushes on that betrayal, all that anger boils out. And they become open aggressive or open angry. And that can be dangerous. Yes, ma'am. That can be dangerous. And that's why I teach people you don't have to be kind all the time. You have a right to be angry when there's an injustice. Like, for example, what's going on over in Cuba right now. They have a right to be angry. They have a right to protest. They have a right to express their anger that's boiled over years of oppression and mistreatment, especially because they're fighting to live. So that happens to each of us individually. There's times when you don't have to be kind, you don't have to be nice. You've got to express your anger. And there's ways to express anger that's healthy. Now, life is not just about your experiences. Life is about the meaning you attach to those experiences. That's where anger begins to simmer, is when we don't acknowledge that hurt made me angry. I'm angry at you. That makes me upset. I don't like it. And men are not good at articulating their emotions. I submit to most men, I tell them, I believe men feel emotions much more deeply than women. I know the men in my life do, and they don't get over things. They don't process their emotions as well as women do. Now, women, we can get to our emotions quickly once information hits us. We go directly to our emotions that can be irrational, and then we have to get back to logic and thinking and articulation that's not angry and dismissive or combative. Whereas men, they take in information and they process it for a long time to get to their emotions. And a lot of times, by the time they processed it and got to the point where they're like, that hurt me, they won't say it. They will cover it up with all kinds of behaviors that I consider passive aggressive, just like women. It's just they do it in a different way. Okay. So that's a lot of, I just wanted to make sure you have a really good definition of anger and how people express anger. Now, people are doing the best that they can based on their own consciousness and personal experience. I think Deepak Chopra said that. I love to tell people to be kinder to yourself, to understand you're doing the best that you can with what you know. And when you know better, you do better when you're ready. I love that quote. I think it's Maya Angelou that said that. When you know better, do better. But you can do better when you're angry, when you're ready. And the first step to becoming better at acknowledging your anger is to admit to it. It is not the primary emotion. Yes, hurt will hit you first, and then anger will boil up. Grief hits you first, and then anger is a part of grieving. Loss comes at you, theft, loss comes at you. That's the first emotion that you'll feel: betrayed and mistrust and hurt. And then anger comes up. And that's where a lot of people park. And unfortunately, when we subdue our anger, we develop all kinds of health problems. Stored anger or mismanaged or unmanaged anger is a root cause of a lot of dis-ease and physical ailments that people are suffering with right now. I'm seeing it a lot. It causes a lot of long-term health problems when we don't learn how to properly express our anger, how to process it. You got to have it. It's an emotion. It's fine, but you got to process it. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to let anger go. But here are some of the short and long-term health problems that unmanaged anger has been linked to: headaches, high blood pressure, heart attack, digestion problems, and abdominal pain, depression, insomnia, increased anxiety, skin problems, even eczema and psoriasis. They can link that to some anger. And then finally, stroke is also linked to unmanaged or subdued anger. So it's so important to face anger and to deal with it. It's so important. It is so important. The whole body and psyche breathes a sigh of relief when you manage your anger, when you face your anger, when you decide, hey, that made me angry. I'm going to have this moment. I'm not going to try and be nice. I'm going to remain kind. Think of the other person. Think of their well-being. Don't resort to crimes of passion where, you express your anger in a way that's going to disrupt your life and everyone you love, including the person you're angry at, the situation you're angry at. All of those things you have a right to. It's your right. It's a human emotion. It's fine. But let's talk about how we can manage it better. I'm going to give you 5 ways to help let go of anger. And these are things that I do. Several years back, I had to face my anger. I had to face the anger that I had let build over decades. And when it finally boiled up, for me, it became microaggression and open hostility, open anger. And that anger lasted for a small bit of time before I realized I needed help. And I needed to know how to process what I was feeling. And this is so important for you to know. Yes, you can go see your pastor and you can manage this spiritually, but I highly encourage you, if you're having any of these health problems, If you're having disrupted or extremely confrontational and agitated interpersonal relationships, if your strife is following you everywhere you go, I ask you to deal with your anger because it's coming out in your behavior. You're either openly angry or you're passive aggressive or microaggressive angry, or you're what we call that middle road anger of where you're subdued angry. Here are 5 ways that you can let go of anger and process it. Again, it's an emotion, and I like to teach people that come to me for help, I like to teach them to process things. You can't experience something and just stay there. You will never be able to practice silence until you confront and deal with your anger because you can't sit still. You can't be quiet. It keeps you moving because it stimulates all of your like chemicals, all of your stress chemicals. When you're experiencing anger, even if you've subdued it and you've got it covered with your nice behavior, that you're not mad and everything's fine, you're still experiencing it biochemical. All the stress chemicals that happen to you, adrenaline and noradrenaline, and metabolic changes that unmanaged anger produces, and then all of those health issues I told you about, you know, you got to process it. Okay? So here's how I process it so I can give my body a release of the emotion of anger. Screaming helps me. Now, I scream into a pillow if I'm with someone, or I will hum, and that's my screaming. But I have to let it out. I have to make noise when I'm angry. And some people do. Some people do. It's a good thing to do to let out pent up emotions. Nothing like a good cry or a good scream to just blow the valve off or take the crust off. It really is. It's really good. And then when I'm done screaming or releasing my anger, like, I do deep breaths. And I teach a lot of self soothing, and I practice a lot of self soothing for myself. Deep breathing, relaxing my jaw, relaxing my forehead, taking my tongue from the roof of my mouth, placing my hands on my thighs and just relaxing my shoulders downward. Because angry people, our shoulders are up here. And letting it out, letting it, pressing out those emotions, just pressing them out is so important. It's such a release for your body. And it's like it takes your foot off the gas of your biochemical responses to this emotion. Another something I like to do is write a letter or write an email. Now, if you're going to write an email, make sure that you write it without putting anything in the subject line and making sure it's nothing in the send line. Okay? They do have where you can call an email back, but that's a very short thing. But writing letters is very helpful, especially if you're angry at people that are gone, that are deceased. I have people do this quite often. Write a letter. I've also had people to place a picture of their loved one, especially if that loved one wronged them, there was issues, place a picture in a chair and have a conversation with them. Or place the picture where you can see it, scream, release the emotion, and then write the letter. Write everything you want to say. I don't care how foul, profane, or disgusting what you have to say is, but just something to get it out of you, to process it, to acknowledge that emotion. It's fine to be angry. It's not fine not to admit it. Okay? That's where we go wrong. is we try to be nice and we try to cover it up. So write that letter, use some of those techniques I just taught. That's really good. Another good thing that I do that helps me with anger is, besides the screaming, I use that. That's my default. I have a that I do. And when I'm in private, I don't do it with anybody else. That's a good pent up emotion reliever. And then I do my self soothing that I just shared with you. But also, exercise is really, really good for getting emotions out. Punching bags are really good for getting emotion out. Um, I found a real good emotional release when we did a team building um exercise at my job where we actually broke up stuff. And I found that very soothing. We used these things to punch stuff with, and it was really soothing. It was very helpful. Um, medi- me- Mediation or meditating is really good for anger if you can get quiet, because meditation requires silence and the practice of silence, which we'll go back to. I'll be teaching more about the practice of silence next Monday, 10 a.m. CST. And I may even have an expert on to help teach us about silence and better listening, which is a really good skill set to practice with your practice of silence, is learning to listen better and talk less. But meditation is so good for anger processing, for identifying anger. Meditation is great. It is really good. But if you can't do it, don't pressure yourself. It may not be one of the things you can do until you process your anger further. Okay? And then this is a big one that my clients and people laugh at when I tell them, and you can color it out. Adult coloring books and pens and pencils. I have them right here in my office, and I color in my planner. I use stickers and things in my planner because that's my creative juices flowing. It helps me. But coloring is so helpful for you. If you have an iPad, they have adult coloring books and coloring things, and you can use your iPen and you can color. It is absolutely wonderful stress reliever. Color with your kids. If your kids have coloring books and things, sit down with them and color for a while. It is so helpful. It sounds corny and silly, but coloring does something for us. It engages the hand and mind coordination that is so important, that adults abandon because we don't play anymore. We don't really do things other than self medicate with food or alcohol and things because we're grown and we can do those things. We forget those things that make us feel good even when we were kids, that help stimulate emotions. That's why kids play. They've got a lot of energy to get out of them. That's why they play and make believe and do all the things that kids do. It's so they can process. And it still works. Coloring works. Swinging in a swing works. I have the best time getting on swings. Now, granted, got to make sure it can hold the weight, that it's an adult swing in a playground. Make sure, just make sure. No, I'm not falling out of one. But I've had some moments where I felt like it was going to tip over. But these are things, remember to play. And that's what coloring is. It's just one thing of play. For guys, you could use race cars. For adults, you can also use Legos. Legos are good. Zanga is a popular game because of the building blocks and just doing hand and eye coordination. Women, this is why men like video games so much. That's why boys like video games so much. It's a processor, it's a hand and eye coordination, it's a way to get emotions out. Now, I don't like the violence in the games, but I don't look down on men that play video games unless it's excessive. But it's actually, it's a stress reliever for them. And especially for those suffering with high blood pressure, you want them to play. You want them to color. You want them to play with Legos or race cars or whatever childish thing you might see them doing. Let them tap back into that processor because it helps with their emotional state. It helps us women. This is why we don't have to depend on shopping or gossip. Or I tell a lot of women that love to talk about people's business that if they dealt with their anger and their own hurt and betrayal, their need to talk about other people will diminish. That whole competitive part of women will diminish if they dealt with their own emotional state. And anger is just one of the many emotions that I believe is epidemic right now, especially during this pandemic, the season of a lot of loss, a lot of suffering, a lot of having to get through doing things you don't want to do, but it's best for society if you do, like the mask. That made a lot of people ticked off, and they're seething angry about it. So that's dealing with anger. Scream. It's fine to scream, to make noise, to sigh, to hum, to process pent up emotions, especially when you can identify from the things you've learned today, from the things I've said today, that you know you're experiencing some anger. We all are. And now that you have a little bit of emotion and acknowledgement, now you can do something about it. Okay? Try any of those things I just suggested. I gave you 5 ways to process anger. And they may sound silly and corny to you till you try them. And then you feel better. And then you go, oh, okay. So much better than letting anger continue to build up. And then the next thing you know, you've done something life altering in a moment of rage. You don't even know where that came from. You don't, it's an over response to whatever happened. Like women, parents, yelling at your kids and being in a constant state of that adrenaline and noradrenaline flowing and crisis and emotions of anger that you repress. It leads to mistreatment and abuse. So I'm telling you these things because of what is coming into those of us that practice mental and emotional health and wellness. We're professionals. We're seeing a lot of very angry people that have unfortunately allowed their anger to get them into life altering situations. And so now they're seeking help. I'm trying to ask you to be proactive. To be proactive. Understand we're all collectively traumatized. We are all collectively angry at what has happened to us with this pandemic. I just want you to deal with it in a way so you can show up in the world the way you want to, and it doesn't hurt those you love or hurt yourself. Okay? So, next week's show, we'll go back to talking about the practice of silence. I may have a health professional on with me if I can get them. It's so hard to lock people down. We're all so busy. So it's really hard to lock people down on a Monday morning to get them to come on and talk to you guys. So I may have to record them earlier and then broadcast it on Monday when I can. But I hope you learned something today that will help you. And if you need to, I am going to place my simple practice, my telehealth link in this show, in the comments, so that if you need to schedule time with me, the first 30 minutes is free. And we can talk, and then you can decide if you need further help, and I can help you. I don't mind. It's hard to help people have a better well being and a happier, healthier life. Okay? So I'll see you guys next week. Remember, I said If you're watching the rebroadcast, make sure you follow me on Facebook or Instagram. And then also make sure you click that subscribe button, like, and share if this information has been helpful to you. Okay? I just want to help people. Okay? Have a great day, Victoria. I'll see you next time, sis. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see all of you guys next Monday. You have a blessed day too, sis. Okay? And I'll see you guys next week, Monday, 10 a.m. CST, right here on the Achieve with Dr. C broadcast. Can't wait to show you guys my new look and everything. We're updating my show so it's more nationally picked up. So we're working on it. Thank you. See you guys later. Bye. Have a great, blessed day.